Hey, welcome again to Have Your Best Week Ever. Don't know where you're at, what part of the world you're in, whether it's uh, across the coast or across the ocean or on the other side from us. But what I challenge you to do as you get ready to jumpstart this week is to really think about what are you going to do dynamic, what are you going to do differently, what are you going to do to really make a and have an impact. At the time of this recording, a lot of us are dealing with a personal pandemic. We live in what a global pandemic, really. Personal, we could have some outside environment on things that would be a little different. And so we could really get to it. So tonight I want to share with you something here. I'm going to start with, just refreshing a little bit as we talked about as we walk through this season, the power of pivoting. So we talk about pausing, taking a moment to assess the situation, taking a moment to say, hey, what is it that's really in front of me? And then praying. I mean, that is spending time still. That's spending time with your God, um, amongst yourself, saying, "Hey, what is it that I must do in order to get these great results? What is it that I must do to move into this new norm that I must create for myself?" So I want to challenge you to think about it from that standpoint, and then that is where you do the pivoting, and then out of that comes a plan. And so one of the things that we're challenging our clients and our team to do is to develop a full playbook. See, the playbook you take with you. The plan, a lot of times plans sit on the shelf, but coaches take playbooks into the game. Generals take playbooks into war with them. So I want you to be ready to take that. So as you pursue and persist, guess what? You got a playbook. You got a playbook. So, that is what we want to share tonight as we go through. This is something we're working on. It's work in process. So if you're interested in it, just, hey, raise your hand, tag me and say, hey, Howard, interested in it. We're going through the Pivot Conference. So coming out of that, this is going to be a full-blown playbook, not just a workbook, but a full-blown playbook. So as you talk about that is, I challenge you to think about change happens all the time. Change happens all the time. And we must change with it. So we must be that change from that standpoint. We must be that be willing to make that change. You know, um, this weekend or was it Friday? I was on a call with someone, and we were introducing them to a new concept. One of the changes that we're making, part of our pivot, is helping others pivot their business online. Help others host events, conferences online. What is your best fit? And so, if you and there's no reason you should not attend the Pivot Conference. There's no reason you should not attend the Pivot Conference. And so when you attend the Pivot Conference, let's say it that way, you're going to think about some things that was going to help you change and make that shift. So I want to challenge you to think about that because change is inevitable. That's one thing that's constant. And part of what the playbook will do is going to ask you some questions. Simple yes or no is going to do. So we're going to actually put this into an automated standpoint and challenge you to think about that. But if you have more than five, yeah, you're in a place that you do need to make some changes in your life. And so I don't know your situation. Hey, you may be just chilling right now and just waiting to get back out, or you may be killing it online. I don't know your situation, but we all had to make some changes. Most of us did. I know I have. And so that is something I'm working on and having that playbook. That's right, that personal pivot playbook to help get me through. And so the question I ask you, what do you need to change? So one of the things that I did early on was created a pivot file. So I have things in there, ideas that come to me through the prayer, pause, pray, and then pivot. So those ideas came to me. And I put that there. Hey, what are the ideas? How am I going to pivot? And then as I place that in place, then we could talk about what we could do. So this here is for ongoing times, and what would other people change about you? Because you want to look at a 360 evaluation, and then you want to begin to prioritize those changes. And what we were saying is what should come first. So like right now, I probably have about 10 different ideas. There's no way I could work on 10 different things at a time. So we're going to put them in a list of 1 through 5. I'm going through this myself. And so one of the things that someone said is, if you want to master something, teach it. If you want to master something, teach it. And so as you think about what it is that you need to change, you can begin to place it in order. When I say place it in order, between 1 to 5 of those things. If you keep a full file like we did, guess what? Then you can always go back and refer to it. But you can also always go back and add to it. So one of the things that we're doing our pivot file, I keep it in Evernote. So I actually have a file labeled pivot ideas. And so whenever I think of something, I put it into that folder. And then when I think of something to help with that, I add it to it. And so as you think about that changing for yourself, you can ask yourself, what are those top 5? I don't know how many it is for you. So as you look at it, this is how we break it down. Here's the change matrix. Here's where the real work starts. Whatever that idea is, that's change number 1. And so one of my changes is actually being able to take my skill set. See, since 1991, I've been working remotely. So I've basically developed a skill set. I've always worked and reported in. I've always worked from an external location. I was always in the field. Then when I started my business, I worked from home some, just depending on as I grew or evolved. And so I had to communicate with external people. Now, the Pivot Conference, the team, guess what, is not located here in Baton Rouge where I am. We're in 4 different places. And so oftentimes we were meeting virtually, we were working virtually. Today we were slacking and talking on the phone. So slacking, zooming, and talking. So those are verbs now. And hey, just put it in Slack. So you ask yourself, how will this change help me? How will this change help me? Who am I making this change for? Why are you making this change? Let's talk about that a little bit. Why are you making this change? And so as you think about that, that is something you have to ask yourself. A lot of, hey, Chandra, how you doing? Good to see you this evening. And so as I think about that, a lot of people had to make shifts and had to make the change. And so it was for them, but why did they have to make it? Sometimes it might be for your job in particular. So whatever that is, then who can help me? So you want to write those names down, those entities down, how they're going to help you. Begin to think about that. And then ask yourself, what happens if I don't make that change? If I don't make that change, what happens? See, that's where the real rubber meets the road. And so then now we come in and literally put in 5 steps. 5 steps, that's right, 5 steps to help you make that change. And then really focus on the first thing. What is the first thing that you can do to make that change? And then begin to do that for the next 21 days. You want to start streaking. And so this is literally, it's that simple, but it's that hard. And see, as we were putting together, we're going to probably have about a 3-day work session on your pivoting plan. And one day is really re-tapping into your goals and your purpose. So you can make sure that the changes you're making are in alignment with who you are and why you are. See, that's the key thing. You want to make sure that they're in alignment with who you are and why you are. And so that is something I want to challenge you to do as you begin to look through and focus on this. And so, sorry about that. Hit the wrong thing there. But as we move through this, the impact you're going to have in making that change, as I get to the last slide here, is that you realize that the change gives you a fresh start. You realize that the change gives you new opportunities. And we like to say the pivot. So when you make that pivot, see, that one small shift puts you in a different direction. But when it's multiplied out, it's very little. But as you diverge, it's going to take you to a whole new destination. And that's what I want to challenge you to really think about this pivot. So all you have to do is pivot and get started. But I want to challenge you, don't launch out here. That's right, don't launch out here without your personal pivot playbook. That's right, don't launch out here without your personal pivot playbook. See, everybody talked about the PPP. Didn't get anything. I mean, I had 2 conversations today of folks saying, hey, I didn't get anything. I applied, but it didn't happen. Okay. So do we sit there and get stuck? Or do we, as we say, pivot and then have a game plan or have your personal pivot playbook? So that's what I want to challenge you to do. So if you would, inbox me if you want to have a discussion about 2 things. 1, the pivot conference. We can give you special access to the pivot conference. And then 2, your personal pivot playbook. See, your personal pivot playbook. We're going to be working with some folks on that some between now and the conference. But the key thing about the conference is going to allow you to, guess what? Get some new ideas, some new strategies. I'm talking about the pivot conference. That's right. Just simply go to the link here in the feed and it'll click you right into the pivot conference. And when you look at the pivot conference, I mean, we're talking 4 international speakers. 4. I mean, did I say 4? Yes, Howard said 4. So, and I'm gonna just pull it up here as I get